I couldn't believe my eyes when I read a story over the weekend about a parliamentary group of MPs who now want to make it even harder for motorists. And unfortunately, they're the walking and cycling group. I didn't know there was such a thing. I won't be joining it anytime soon, but what do you make of this?
Well, I fell off my chair. Can you imagine actually going to court? You were doing 31 in a 30-mile. How can you get any accuracy for a start in terms of actually measuring things? And, you know, people, and I don't often agree with the head of the AA, Edmund King, because quite rightly, speed limits are there for a purpose. Yeah. But for 1 mile over limit, all that people are going to be doing is staring at their speedometer and looking at the roads. It's a bit like 20-mile-an-hour zones. The same situation occurs. It's mass stupidity, and it's the asylum that's in Westminster for anti-car policies is just growing by the day. Well,
it really is. And these MPs and peers cannot show themselves to be more sort of out of kilter with public opinion, because a bit like the ULEZ conversations we've been having around the outside areas around sort of outer London, you know, ordinary people drive cars because they have to. You know, ordinary business people drive vans because they have to. They're not doing it because it's a pleasure, because I can tell you something, it certainly is not a pleasure driving around in most parts of this country for most of the time. You know, I sort of shudder when I have to think about whether it's going to take me 2 hours or 3 hours to get to Sussex on a Friday afternoon, because you just never really know. Roads being closed off, so they really don't know what on earth is going on.
Millions will share your feelings, Mike. I mean, I went to a wedding in Germany on Friday, and I actually hired a car to drive about 100 kilometres, and I didn't spot one pothole. Right. And these are the sorts of things. This country is actually a third world country in terms of motoring policies. And it's so sad that they don't recognise that 37 million people drive. Something like 60 to 70% cannot survive without their car. They're out their vehicles. And certainly the commercial heartbeat can't survive without actually driving on the roads. And this government and local politicians and national politicians in councils across the country, they keep going for the motorists at every opportunity. They are going to really pay for this at the next election.
Well, they really are, because there's an awful lot of people who have cars that vote, of course, and the problem for me with cyclists is that, yes, you can probably say that the vast majority of cyclists do the right thing and don't do the wrong thing, but unfortunately, every time I'm in a car, I see some cyclist going through a red light, I see some cyclist cycling next to me when he's got a cycle lane, which is perfectly good, doesn't want to use it, you know, people who don't stop for pedestrians, you know, you see it every single day. And, I mean, bizarrely, they started the show this morning, had a message from somebody who's down near Bank today. Apparently the police are pulling over cyclists and giving them tickets for jumping red lights. First time ever.
Well, fantastic if that's the truth. Yesterday I was at an anti-ULEZ rally in Whitehall, and I parked my car up, you know, about half a mile away, put it in place. But on the way to getting to that parking spot, I just took note as usual, and I've got it on film actually on my dash cam of cyclists going through red lights. But what the worst thing about it, Mike, is that one particular was a family, mum and dad at the back, mum at the front, the kids in the middle, and they went through a red light, all four of them. And can you believe it? This is the sort of stupidity. They think they are bulletproof. Right. And I'm afraid, in terms of cycling at the moment, it's like the Wild West out there.
Well, I had one the other day. I was driving back from getting my car serviced somewhere in southwest London, and I was coming up to a zebra crossing, and as always, you're kind of slightly careful because you know there might be somebody doing something idiotic, and suddenly this cyclist came right from nowhere and kind of appeared to be about to cross it. And I hadn't stopped yet, but I did stop because I sort of had to. He then sort of cycles across the zebra crossing, which I'm pretty sure you're not meant to do on a bicycle. You're supposed to get off and sort of, you know...
They're for pedestrians.
Well, they're for pedestrians, and if you want to walk across it with your bike, fine. This guy then snarls at me as if I'd done something wrong. And I was like, well, I actually did stop for you, which I didn't have to do, since you're not actually obeying the rules of the highway code. But he had about 55 bits of metal stuck in his face, which I presume he had done voluntarily rather than as a result of pranging himself into something. But they're just very nasty and horrible individuals, some of these cyclists, and so you have no sympathy for them. But these idiots who sit in the House of Lords and the House of Commons seem to think that we should give them more rights and take away more rights from motorists.
And it's going to get worse, I'm afraid, until we've got a general election next year, and it's time to actually make a change, because we said earlier, 37 million drivers, something like 90% of them vote. or potentially vote, and they are sick to death of what's going on. Every single direction we look at, they are being asked to pay more money. You can't do this, you can't do that. All of the sorts of things hitting motorists. It's not right. It's got to stop now. We need a good road transport policy, but we also need a good road transport government.
Well, we do. And you haven't got one in London at the moment. You may be able to do something about that. The most amazing story at the weekend, cancer patients being made to pay the ULEZ fee, £12.50, to visit about 35 different hospitals in the now expanded ULEZ section. They can then apparently apply for a rebate. How about you just don't charge them in the first place?
Well, absolutely right. And what is really bad about this, besides the whole ULEZ policy, and as you know, I'm the only candidate in London who's going to get rid of all ULEZ, but the important thing to understand here, they're actually asking the doctor to arbitrate, decide whether they qualify. I'm sorry, that can't be fair, asking them, the medics there to actually diagnose and treat medical conditions, not whether they actually can, should or not pay the ULEZ fee. And I find it incredible. Now, apparently, they're asking the hospitals to actually handle the administration and paying this back. I mean, what's going on with Sadiq Khan? He is the most clueless, out-of-touch politician and the most dishonest politician that's ever been on this planet.
Yes, and he keeps banging on. I mean, I haven't seen too many of his prognostications in the last couple of days, but banging on about how the air in London's already improving. I mean, he's now sort of doing the miracle of the loaves and fishes next, isn't he? I mean, this is a guy who seems to think that, you know, despite every single, you know, climatologist and environmental scientist saying no matter what we do about pollution and CO2 and all the rest of it, nothing would actually change. There will be no change at all over the course of the next 10 to 15 years. Why does he think, you know, after a week, the air quality in London has suddenly got better?
He is deluded. It's as simple as that. And don't forget, he's got, I can't remember the exact figure, but 3 to 4 billion big black hole of debt. And guess where we always go? The Chancellor does the same thing. But how much more can we get out of the motorists? How much more can we get out of drivers? And that's the sort of thing he's doing. He's doing this also because he's got a huge ego and he can't be, some sort of humility thrown at us and say, OK, I got it wrong. I'm not going to do it anymore. He can't do that. That's the way he works. And we are all suffering for it. And the economy of London suffering from it. And the social cohesion and community of London suffering from it, all because of his big ego.
And he's had nothing to say, has he, about the study that was done in Glasgow, where they looked at the air pollution in Glasgow since June to August of this year, when the ULEZ was put in, when the low emission zone was put in, compared to the same time previous year when there was no pollution law, and the pollution's got worse. Brilliant.
I know, but as I said many, many times on your show, his policy is based on emotion, not fact. And that's the issue that's happening, unfortunately, in national government. We're seeing it with Rishi Sunak with his net zero policies. We've got the 2030 ban coming up. All these things, they're going to pay at the ballot box, I promise you.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, as far as the sort of the next level of charging goes, I know that he's also been pretending, hasn't he, Sadiq Khan, that he hasn't been looking into the pay-per-mile model. But of course, it turns out he's appointed somebody to look into it at the same time. So, I mean, how far away are we from him doing that? He's not going to mention that before the election, is he?
Well, there's been job adverts from the Greater London Assembly for people to actually look into this. It's been around about 3, 4, 5 months, those job adverts for about paper mile executives and what they are. No doubt they'll all be on £100,000 each. Yeah. I'm afraid we are close to it. You know, the cameras are being put up there around the country, you know, the ones that are working and haven't been vandalised. They are there for paper mile. It's no secret. Everyone knows that. And unfortunately, our central government is looking into this too very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely right. And as far as the ULEZ in outer London goes, the expanded zone that came in on the 29th of August, I mean, I know it's probably too early to give a definitive answer to this, but it's not working very well, is it?
No, I don't think it is. About 30% of the cameras aren't working for a start. Yeah. And as you know, with I got Noel Wilcox into the media, and I think you guys have spoken to him about the fact these signs are unlawful. Yeah. There's a lot more to come from that side of things, because I think the courts are going to really make a lot of influence in terms of whether these ULEZ is ever going to go ahead. Because I'm telling you now, the anger out there is palpable beyond belief. People are going to continue to complain and fight like mad, and I'm one of them. Yeah,
absolutely. A couple of texts have come in here. One says this: was recently on a speed awareness course, and one of the videos they show you said the contraption the police hold to measure your speed is much more accurate than your car speedometer. So how will that work with such a thin margin? It's a good point, isn't it?
Absolutely right. And 1 mile, you know, as I say, 31 against 30, and you go to court and you say, appeal about it. What a waste of time, waste of money. It is not accurate, and even the police ones admitted to me that they said they cannot measure 1 mile.
No. Of course they can't, because your speedometer isn't. I mean, it's not done in those kind of increments. You know you're doing 30. If you've got a digital readout, you're doing 31. But in between 30 and 31, before you hit 31, how does anybody else know what you're doing?
Yeah, and you're looking down, oh, hang on, I'm doing 32, 31, oh, hang on, take your foot off the throttle, oh, hang on, someone's going across, it's a cyclist.
Yeah, right.
We've got all these problems about attention and keeping our eyes on the road. That's the most important issue that we've got to sort out. And one of the things that we're not looking at is dangerous driving. Yeah. We're all against dangerous driving. It's nothing to do with those sorts of speeds. It's all about idiots on the road.
Yeah, absolutely right. Too many of them.